We are now recording. So once again, we want to welcome everybody to this event, Loving What Passes Away, sponsored by the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition and the Crescent City Gaian Guild. My name is Bart Everson. I'm here in New Orleans. I was drawn here because Richard Waller contacted me after we did a session on filling in canals to restore wetlands. I'd like to kind of pass this on and ask people to introduce themselves in turn. I'm going to ask Richard to go last. So if I could ask Andy to introduce himself briefly, and after Andy, we'll hear from Ann.
I didn't think I'd be up. I apologize. I'm Andy Kowalczyk. I've worked in the past with 350 New Orleans, and right now I'm working in transmission policy for clean energy. So that's me, and I'm glad to be here today because I always like a good slideshow with pictures of nature, and the good and the bad.
Great, thank you so much. If we could hear from Ann next, and after Ann, we could hear from John.
Hi, this is Ann Meyer. I hope this is working. I am sitting in, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am, okay, good. Because I'm sitting in one of the Glenwood Springs sulfur hot tubs, hot pools, and I have been more and more aware of what passes away, not only in Louisiana, but as we drove across Colorado, seeing what is so different from the time when I moved here many years ago. I appreciate the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition putting this together with the Gaian Guild, and thank you so much for allowing me here.
Thank you. If we could hear from John next, followed by Bob.
So you can hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay, well, remarkably, what Ann just said echoes what I bring to the table, in that I'm in Colorado too. And I've noticed the changes in birds and the weather patterns and fire danger and so much. I'm here because I have the pleasure of being a friend of Richard, and I admire him, his photography, and his writing. So I'm just very happy to know about this.
Great. If we could hear from Bob next, followed by Brian.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Seidel. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, where I went to high school with Richard, and he and I became pretty good friends back then, trying to change the world in various ways. And although we didn't see each other for about 50 years, we've gotten back together, and here I am.
Fantastic. If we could hear from Brian next, that would be great, followed by David.
Hello, everyone. I'm joining from Middletown, Connecticut, where I live in proximity to the Connecticut River, and I've spent 30 years here as an expat from California. I am fortunate to have gotten to know Bart recently through a Gaian group that we both are members of, and I am stunned by the changes I've seen in my lifetime. I'm currently preparing my own talk for Earth Day, for the 51st anniversary of the first Earth Day, and it's daunting and gives you pause to reflect on everything that's transpired in the past half century.
Thank you. If we could hear from David next, and then Elizabeth would be up.
Are you talking about me, David Schwartz?
Yes, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Oh, great. This is a surprise to me. Yes. Well, I'm interested in this. Of course, Richard Waller and I used to be roommates in the house in college, in a very small, intense place called New College. And both of us were transfixed at the time by nature. And he really went out. 35 years later, I flew out to Hawaii, and he showed me everything that he was doing there. And then I came down to New Orleans when he came. And I think his photographs, as he has been going along, have fascinated me. And of course, we share a love for Wendell Berry. So we've been in the same soup, but he's the great photographer.
I agree. If we could hear from Elizabeth next, followed by Emma.
Good morning, everybody. Sometimes my computer freaks out when I have my camera on, and there's so much video on, so I'm off camera this morning. But I think just the whole idea of the program sounded beautiful to me, so I wanted to be here. And then listening to everybody else speak, I have to say that I think I'll say this is in memory of my father, who was an atheist, but really Mother Nature, he worshiped Mother Nature, often went for walks in the woods and just revered nature. So I think I'm here in honor of him today. Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It sounds like your father would have fit right in with the Gaian Guild. It's basically a description of us. If we could hear from Emma next, that would be great, followed by Erin.
Hi there, good morning. I am in Waveland, Mississippi, surrounded by water, and I'm a friend of Richard's, and I follow and support the work that he does and his beautiful photography. And Wendell Berry.
Thank you, Emma. If we could hear from Erin next, and then I think that Pastor Gregory Manning will be up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin. I am in New Orleans, and I've really been, working on uprooting my own racism and all of the ways in which it shows up. And environmental racism is of interest to me, and I decided that I'm woefully behind in how I'm actually showing up versus how I'm intellectualizing things. And so I'm here as a guest of Gregory Manning, who is a leader in my town in environmental racism and addressing that. And I'm trying to improve my record of showing up and being a good follower.
Thank you, Erin. We're glad to have you here. And speaking of Pastor Manning, I believe he's up next. Pastor, if you could introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Bart. My name is Pastor Gregory T. Manning, and I am the chair and founder of the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition. And I'm here because just trying to live this moment, becoming more mindful of all of God's creation, and just happy to be here in this Earth Month to take a moment of pause and to reflect and to meditate on the precious gift of the earth that we've all been given. So it's just good to see so many people from so many places on this call today. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you, Pastor. Certainly appreciate you being here. And I'd also like to next ask Kristina if she could introduce herself, and followed by Kala.
Hi, Kristina Peterson. I live on the bayou named Blue in the heart of the bayou area of Louisiana. And we see the disappearance of our land and our place so vividly on a daily basis. And I'm here because Bart had just shared the incredible photos that images that Richard had created, and was just drawn to that. And also, of course, Wendell. Thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kristina. If we could now ask Kala to introduce. Actually, I may be mispronouncing your name, so I'm sorry if that's the case.
It's okay. Yeah, my name is Kayla.
Kayla.
I am here at the invitation of Kristina. I'm a graduate student, so thank you for having this event.
All right. Thank you, Kayla. If we only have a few people left, if I could ask for Nancy to introduce herself next, and she'll be followed by, well, we've got two Michaels, so she'll be followed by Michael Bellamy.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Ruggeri, and I have stumbled into this community, and I'm already so grateful for that. I know Bart through the work that I do in academia and teaching and learning, but I am currently sitting on the shores of the Great Lakes. I'm in a northern suburb of Chicago. And I have had a passion for conservation. I've had the privilege of working both in Africa and Asia and seeing firsthand the destruction of environments in those areas that I worked in. Primate behavioral ecology is what I did at one time. And I'm very, very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could hear from Michael Bellamy next, followed by Michael De La Rosa. Oh.
Hi, I'm Michael Bellamy. I'm a good friend of Richard's. Been hanging out for a couple of years now. He introduced me to Wendell Berry. I had read one of Berry's books years ago. He just educated me about William Berry in 2 courses, not one. I'm in New Orleans also, and I'm glad to be here.
And we're glad to have you here. If we could hear next from Michael De La Rosa and then from Peter.
Hello, good morning. My name's Michael. I'm here this morning. I've been attending the Gaian Guild meetings here in New Orleans for the last couple months or so. So I'm happy that we have a different program this morning. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If we can next hear from Peter, and then after Peter, Rita.
Yeah, I'm Pete Digre, and I'm from New Orleans, and I was really taken by the combination of poetry and visuals as a way of focusing on what we're losing and the cost of it. So very glad to be here.
Thank you so much. If we could hear from Rita next, and then she'll be followed by Robert. Oh, and Rita, you're on mute.
Hi, I'm a friend of Richard's. He has told me a lot about John Charles and the area around New Orleans that is now flooding, mostly due to the oil industry. So it's been very interesting, and I'm hoping that we can find some way to resolve some of our issues that we're having. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. If we could hear from Robert next, and then I think that will be everybody except Richard.
Hello, my name is Robert Desmarais Sullivan. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana, the Desmarais over there. My brother-in-law has been telling me for 70 years that the marshes were disappearing. He was a fishing pilot, and he'd come back and tell me, and I paid no attention. But then after the Deepwater Horizon, something clicked in me. I took my mother's name, Desmarais, as my middle name. It means from the marshes. And it just breaks my heart now when I see it all disappearing.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anybody I left out? I think that's everybody except, of course, Richard. So we're going to turn it over to Richard. He can introduce himself and also explain a little bit about what we're going to see.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining this. I'm not going to be the leader here. I'm just going to be maybe an instigator and to show 23 photographs of John Charles, Ile de Jean Charles, and then start off a discussion of the passage from Wendell Berry. I'd like to say I came here after Katrina. I've worked in the wetlands, and for 6 years, I have been going down in the marsh south of Homa, where John Charles is. And I go out in a little kayak with a camera and I photograph. It's a beautiful place, but it's also a tragic place. And I've also, over these 6 years, gotten to know a small number of people who either live on the island or who used to live on the island but come back to work or to fish or just to socialize. And so this has been a long-term project for me to chronicle what is going on in this little island. And we're going to look at 23 pictures, and with Bart's guidance, we're going to look at them slowly in silence. And the only thing you'll hear, and it won't be hopefully just static from the transmission, but it'll be sounds of the wetlands. I don't know that these are sounds of the Louisiana wetlands, but I think with Bart's good idea that we won't be talking while we look at the pictures. And then after the pictures, we'll discuss the passage from Wendell Berry. So I hope this works. It's a novel to me, and I'm very appreciative for all of you joining in. Thank you very much. So Bart, I guess we could, if you want to say it, if you have something you want to help with, and then we'll look at the photos.
Yes, thank you. That is wonderful, and a wonderful introduction. And I just would add only that we are trying to construct a contemplative experience. And it seems a little bit at odds with the idea of sitting in front of a computer or an electronic device, right? So the idea, of course, is that this will enable us in a way to kind of virtually visit a part of the world, farther for some of us than for others, but a part of the world that we might not be able to visit so easily. And in order to kind of simulate that experience, we're asking you to take time to be quiet. We can stay on mute. We do have an audio, some ambient audio recorded from wetlands to play. But each of these photos I'm going to present to you for a length of time that might be a little longer than we are used to in our busyness. So I ask you to kind of be comfortable, seated comfortably, to be relaxed, and to be open to what you're seeing and to what you're hearing. And we'll move slowly through these photos. After the last photo, we will have a passage to contemplate as well, which Richard will read for us. So after that, I'm going to invite you just to sit with the passage for a while. Just let it sit with you. See how you react, and then we're going to invite some dialogue. You don't have to rush in to speak, but on the other hand, we don't want you to be shy about speaking either. So we're hopeful that some dialogue will emerge. And if we all just feel completely quiet, that's fine too. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and we will begin. All right, Richard, if you would like to read this.
This is from the book Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry. This book is a fictitious autobiography of a man who was the town's barber, grave digger, and church custodian. And he writes towards the end of the book, which is towards the end of his life. Quote, "It is not a terrible thing to love the world, knowing that the world is always passing and irrecoverable, to be known only in loss. To love anything good at any cost is a bargain. It is a terrible thing to love the world, knowing that you are a human and therefore joined by kind to all that hates the world and hurries its passing. The violence and greed and falsehood that overcome the world that is meant to be overcome with love." So to me, I've been reading Wendell Berry for 50 years. And I have a pretty good handle on what he means. But the first part of this passage is not that understandable to me. And I'm hoping today, with everyone's contribution, that we can figure out something about it. The second part of the passage is also something I struggle with, because I don't know sometimes what to say or how to respond to people who blithely go about killing the world, whether it's the oil people, whether it's the engineers who want to reconfigure the rivers, or whether it's the people who don't take any responsibility for their actions. And so I'm looking forward to being educated here.
Well, if you're waiting for a question, I could pose one. That first part of that, David Schwartz, I neglected to say I'm in Ithaca, New York. You know, this puzzle about the forces that are anti-nature, anti the natural world, you know, for gain. You really have to think, what is it in people that they can be so unbelievably hateful, that they can be for death? And it seems to me that this is something very strong in the United States. This tradition that's for the destruction of the natural world, you know, for incarcerating children, for, you know, all of these things that all amount to systematic killing. What is that? And what do you do about it? There's a kind of prophetic Christian approach to it. There are also others. That's as far as I've gotten wondering about it. You can just say it's not an accident that the natural world is destroyed with such glee.
I'd like to add to what David's saying. I don't know if I can be heard.
Yes.
The island of Ile de Jean Charles is 95% gone. I think maybe 95% of the people who used to live there. At one point, the population in the 1950s were 400 people, made up from 3 Indian groups. The oil and gas industry came and dug wells right at the people's houses, right in their side yards, right by their gardens. And many of those people then got sick because all the chemicals that are used in the drilling process are all poison. And in addition to the poison from the drilling, the canals that the oil and gas industry cut to the island from the Gulf of Mexico allowed the salty water to come in, which helps to kill the grass plants, the marsh plants. And this has been done with no protection from the state or the federal government or the parish of Lafourche. Nobody has spoken up for these people over all these years. And it has been with lies, it has been with deception, it has been because it's out of sight, because this island is down in a marsh. It's an hour and a half from here. Hardly anybody has ever been there, and hardly anybody here in New Orleans knows about this. The ignorance of us over all these years has protected the oil and gas industry and allowed it to go on with its destruction. So I just want to second what David is saying. This is not unique to this island, but I think this island is a very clear example of the destructive streak that's in our culture.
Could I speak?
Please do, Emma.
Can you hear me? Okay. To me, the bottom line is greed. You know, how can you can't stop greed, and because there has to be some type of balance. Okay, greed, what does greed do? You know, greed kills a soul, that's for sure. Those of us that are in this group know that, but also greed also helps provide jobs for people. It does all these things that our culture sees as good. So how do you stop greed? There's no way to do it. We're like on this train that can't be stopped now, and there has to be a way. Richard, your photographs evoke so much emotion, and if everyone could see this type of thing that shows the truth of what is happening, and you can touch their hearts and their soul into this, but there's that greed is always going to be there. It's like ingrained in our culture. So how do you stop it? There's no way to do that.
If I might respond to what you're saying, there used to be a way of doing it, which was that certainly when I grew up, and even many years as an adult, there wasn't a society, a cultural barrier between things that made money and things that weren't there to make money. For hospitals and medicine were not there to make money. Education, they were not there to make money. And that's what kept, I think, greed at bay, because there was a certain place that you didn't go into and say, let's convert this to a cash-making organization, the cultural traditions. But I think that barrier was breached, like cancer becoming malignant. And it went over into the other sphere and has eaten it all up. It's all now profit. So there's nothing to hold it, but there could be. This guy Illich that I spent time with said once that a culture is that which keeps the economy at bay.
David, that quote hit me like a bolt of lightning. I grew up in the Creole culture of Cameron Parish.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very much attached to the land. Farmed, had cattle. And somewhere in there, the people gave up being Creole and the culture fell apart. I have an uncle who was a formidable accordion player and was proud of his French music. But in his 20s, he put his accordion away, took to drinking, left his wife. And to me, that's almost emblematic of what I'm thinking about. And I think if the Creole culture had stayed strong and vibrant, the people would have been able to resist the intrusions of the oil and chemical industries. So I connected with culture, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I may just add a word, in looking at these pictures, and again, thank you for that presentation. I'm just reminded of the fact that, number one, that this is our home. This earth is our home. And all creatures, including human beings, share it in different ways. And we choose where we want to reside and what space we want to take up. And as I was looking at these pictures, looking at some pictures of homes, that racism is very prevalent in different forms and it presents itself in different ways. And when we look at racism, whether it was back in the represented in the redlining of the 1960s that represented where people would be allowed to live and where others would not be allowed. We have to look at environmental racism and the fact that, when we look at our inner city communities, they are presented in many liquor stores and places that give payday loans are set up, and they're not given supermarkets, and all of that is just racism, environmental racism. This is no different, and that's what I think we need to teach people more and more. that racism is racism, and the environmental racism that destroys homes is what is happening when we look at the oil and gas and fossil fuel industry, that it's destroying homes. It's destroying our home, which is the earth. And we have been willfully blind. And we need to open our eyes and give people this sort of picture as much as we can. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you again.
So the part of the passage that was read by Wendell Berry that I consider prophetic is in the middle. And as we don't have it in front of us, what it says essentially is that we are, as humans, we are joined to all. Can you put it up there? Humans, that we are joined to all that hates, that's it, to all that hates the world. And the stunning thing about those words is whether you use the singular hate or the plural hates. And what it says is that as humans, we are joined to all the other humans that hate the world. And we are joined to all that hates the world. And the all, to me, in that phrase can represent the greed that each of us has and the privileges that many of us have and the blindness that we have. So that particular sentence is particularly deep for me in the awareness that we're joined as both humans and we're joined to the forces that are hating the world and destroying our home and our homes.
But to love anything good at any cost is a bargain. Because if we learn even to love the smallest item, we've at least begun to overcome hate with love, however small it may be. So it is not a terrible thing to love the world, even though the world is always passing, because at least we learn to love.
I was struck by one or two of the photos that showed an individual plant or a few plants somehow surviving among the destruction that was going on. And as I mentioned, I live in Baltimore, and like in any city, you can find plant life growing up somehow through the cracks in the concrete. And so when I saw those particular photos, it reminded me of how easy it is to find examples like that everywhere. But the other thing I wanted to say is several people have talked about what is, I think David started out by saying, what is it in people that can make them be involved in the death and destruction of the national world, incarcerating children, and so on. I would certainly argue that it's important to understand what it is that makes people do those things. I think it's also important to understand that it hasn't always been this way, that most of human history, or prehistory, if you will, was in tribal communities with a very low level of technology, and the social relationships were appropriate to that level of technology. They were communal, not alienated from each other. Why? Because people had to survive as a group, or no individual would survive. They had to work together, hunting and gathering, and even with the beginnings of horticulture, planting, nobody could survive on their own. It was only with the development of further technology and the productivity of human effort increasing that things got more specialized, and people began working not just to feed and house and clothe themselves and their children and the people around them, but that they could begin to exchange things, commodify things, and the development of money and trade that created real alienation. People began to do work not simply to survive, but to engage in these kinds of economic transactions. And with more and more technology, it became possible for some people to exploit others. And that's what we see through all of recorded history. But what I find there's a great deal to be optimistic about in those early human experiences, because it means that it's possible for us to behave differently. And what we have to do is find the ways to confront what we see in the world today and say, no, this is not necessary. Climate catastrophe is not necessary. Nuclear war is not necessary. All of the racist and sexist and other oppressive systems that we see today are not necessary. But that means we have the possibility, however small, to change it. And so, to me, what's most important is to discuss and act on how to make those changes.
Are you saying that greed developed as a result of cities, the organization into civilized states, and that we have to find a way to abandon greed without abandoning cities? Am I understanding you?
No. Sorry if it's not being all that clear. I would argue, in fact, that a type of greed is inherent. That is in our genetic makeup. We are what we are as conveyances for our genes. They are out there to survive in whatever the environment is. The ones that don't adapt die, the ones that do adapt survive. So the question is, what is it about what we do that is a good, healthy survival strategy? And clearly, today, human beings who have evolved these fantastically complex brains that are capable of science and art and philosophy have not let or have somehow kept the best of us from dominating. And we need to figure out how to reorganize things to focus on the best. The problem is we don't have much time. We really don't, as a species. Nuclear war, something that most of us, certainly, I mean, I was born let's see, 12, 14 months after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So like maybe everybody on here, maybe a few of you were born a little bit before that, lived with that all my life, and somehow we have managed to avoid further catastrophe in that front. But we have not managed to avoid the destruction of the world as we know it through environmental calamity, which is already, and other people on here I'm sure know the details. Richard certainly does better than I have about the loss of species and so many other things. But we are, and obviously the disappearance of islands like Jean Charles with rising water. But because we have a certain kind of intelligence, philosophical, we have the possibility to know that we can change. We have the possibility to know that what's in our genes is not our entire destiny. We can do something. We can choose not to just do what feels good in the moment. We can choose to do something more essential.
Thank you, Bob. That is really, I agree with what you're saying. We are winding down to our end of our time here, and I see that Elizabeth has had her hand up. So I'd like to call on her, and then we're going to give the last word to Richard.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for the beautiful photographs, and this is a really fantastic discussion. What it brings up for me is that lately in the work I've been doing for environmental and climate justice, I've been paying a lot of attention to what the young people are doing, and the very young people, actually. Kids who aren't even 10 years old yet, who are interested in all this and getting involved. And I highly recommend paying attention to what the youth are doing, because it seems to me that they have the most to lose. And there are a lot of youth who are not interested in the capitalist system as it stands. So they're willing to shift away from what the system has been like over the past at least 400 years to save the planet and save themselves. So I just highly recommend paying attention to what the young people are doing to be inspired and to have hope, and also to have direction about what to do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you again.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Richard, I think you have the final word.
Thank you all. I am very appreciative for you coming and joining this morning. And I think this discussion has been pretty interesting and has given me a lot to think about. And I think Bart's approach of making the meditative aspect of this integral to it, I think that's really helped the discussion. I think I think it's been very thoughtful. I do recommend this book, Jayber Crow, because I think this is in some way an allegory for our world. I think this the things that people have talked about, the loss of community, the loss of culture, the persistence of this destructive greed. This is what that book is about. But it's not written in a theoretical way. It's written as this guy's life. And it's a very worthwhile book. I am a big fan of Wendell Berry, so I'm just a little bit biased. But if you have a chance to read this book, I think you'll find it very, very rewarding. So thank you all, and thank you, Bart, for putting this together. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for your attendance and participation today. Also, thanks to the Gaian Guild and the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition. I'd encourage anybody who's interested in this kind of approach to spirituality to take a look at Gaianism.org and see if there is a local group near you. There is one in New Orleans. And of course, if you're in the New Orleans area, you may want to get involved with the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition. So thank you, everybody. Have a pleasant day. And
thank you.
Thanks especially to Richard for sharing so much and
Yes,
instigating
indeed.
this whole thing.
You all very much.
Thanks so much, Bart.
Bye-bye.